People imagine that there's like this cutthroat viciousness, but I found that's not the case at all. Like I'm constantly taking coffee with people and telling them like how I got my first agent and referring them to things and like talking about I'm also a filmmaker and I kind of talk about like how I made my first projects as a writer director in order to get those first acting roles, you know? And I feel like we're all in this together and I can't stress it enough like how each person that you meet that might be the thing that leads you to the next step, but it's like about making meaningful connections and, making great friends.
If you're a professional actor challenged by an increasingly fragmented industry, then this podcast is for you. The Hollywood Actor Podcast is an anthology made up of the stories of actors building their bodies of work by redefining themselves, reframing their goals, and reevaluating their opportunities. No matter where we are in our careers, we're always looking to be inspired and to share ourselves across our community. This podcast offers that opportunity to guests and to listeners alike as we all discover what it means to be a working, professional, successful actor. This is Jamie Young, and you're listening to the Hollywood Actor Podcast. Today's guest is Sonja O'Hara. Sonja is a graduate of the 2-year Meisner program at the New York Conservatory for Dramatic Arts. Her credits include Ovum, available on Amazon Prime Video's Tribeca Shortlist channel, Doomsday, also available on Prime Video, and Astral, an upcoming TV series. You can see Sonja in the indie feature film On the Corner of Ego and Desire, now available on Indie Film Hustle TV, and follow her as Sonja K. O'Hara on social media. Now let's talk with Hollywood actor Sonja O'Hara.
I'm from a fishing village in Nova Scotia, a very small place. When I was growing up there, my mother was a French teacher, and so was Ellen Page's mother of Juno. So when we were little kids, I remember her auditioning for this part in a Canadian TV miniseries. And at that moment that I heard about that, I was like, oh my God, I want to be doing that too. And I started enrolling in local acting classes at like 9, 10 years old. And at that point, I had the bug, got like a first tiny local agency in Halifax, and just kept obsessively taking, improv classes and on-camera classes until I was old enough to go to college for it. And then I moved to New York at 17 and went to acting school at the New York Conservatory for Dramatic Arts and did their 2-year Meisner program and just absolutely fell in love and was like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Like, this is what I'm sort of meant to do. So I didn't stop at that point. And then it was constantly like taking classes at Barrow Group and Labyrinth Theater Company and just continual on-camera classes and just trying to, get as strong as I could with my auditions.
What was that journey like, going from a small fishing village, as you describe it, in Nova Scotia, starting to get interested because you start to see that one person, or maybe you start seeing a smaller community that are maybe auditioning regularly for commercials, and then thinking, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Maybe I should transition to a larger market, and quite a large market, as New York City.
Right. I mean, for me, I remember going to film festivals. That was sort of the local thing. We have something called the Atlantic Film Festival that would show these like beautiful local movies. And I remember around the point of being a teenager and just seeing a film called Marion Bridge that, again, Ellen Page was in because she was sort of like the one actress that I knew locally that was getting out there into the world at large. And I saw that she had made the transition from acting locally in Halifax to moving to Toronto. And then I also saw that Toronto wasn't really Hollywood, and I knew that if I wanted to do this, I wanted to do it at sort of the most competitive level. And at that point, I started looking into that if you went to college in the States, that was a way to be able to get a visa, to be like an artist visa, to actually be able to work here. So at an age when I think other people were just sort of trying to figure out maybe what they even wanted to do with their life at 15, 16, I was looking into like, do I want to go to an NYU? Like, is Juilliard the way? And I was just really obsessed with that. And when I moved to New York and decided I wanted to do a conservatory program there, I had never been to the States other than I had been to Maine for a skiing vacation once, but I didn't know anyone here at all. And I just was like, just knew that if I wanted to do this, I couldn't stay in a city that was primarily, shooting Lifetime movies and pretending Halifax was Boston on screen. Like I needed to be sort of in the hub of everything. So at that point, it was like, do I stay in Canada and go to the National Theatre School, which is sort of our Juilliard, or do I just take the leap and move to the States? And I decided that was what I wanted to do. And I had to, navigate all of that because in Canada, school is much more affordable than in America. So even the student loan people were like, they couldn't even imagine. They were baffled by tuition prices in America. Like it was just something that people didn't even understand in Canada. But I found a way. And then my mother remortgaged her house to send me to acting school, which was incredible. Like she's the most supportive person I've ever met
Wow.
in my life.
Right.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, that's a real 0 to 60 for your entire family then, as you got interested and said, I want to operate at the highest levels, like you're saying, of this industry that I understand I am going to be a part of.
And it was one of those things where if I didn't do it on that level for school, if I didn't try to go to a great program and get out of Canada, it just maybe wouldn't be possible later. So I had full support, but it was certainly really scary. And like the first day that I arrived in New York, I was like, oh God, am I ready? Like I felt so scared and vulnerable. And I was like, I don't think I'm ready for this emotionally. And then, orientation took over and we were having like, a field trip in Central Park and all of this stuff. And I very quickly was like, okay, I'm adjusting. I'm seeing my first Broadway show. This is very exciting. And then I sort of was all in. But there were a few days where I'm like, I'm insane. I should have like stayed in Canada. Yeah.
There's nothing like it diving in. We talk about that on the podcast repeatedly about people just they bet it all, whether it be a movie or relocating. Yeah, because their passion seems like it's so strong right from the get-go at times.
Right. And it felt like if you had a backup plan that you would back up. So for me, it was always really important to me that I was all in and I committed 100%. And I didn't want to just do the thing like lots of other actors will get degrees in something else that's, a more logical thing. And I think that's so fantastic. But for me, it was always like act or die. Like I had this like really
Mm.
extreme mindset as a teenager anyway.
How did you find the New York Conservatory? How was that experience?
It was interesting because now in hindsight, like there's so much more I know now that I'm not, like a high school student trying to find an acting school in another country. Like now it feels like it would have made more sense to be pursuing like a Yale drama or, anything like that. But in Nova Scotia, there I was like Googling acting schools. I was getting no real help. And I knew that I wanted to be doing a conservatory program where I was able to focus on camera acting because I had done years of theater and I enjoyed it, but it just didn't feel like specifically what I wanted. Like I fell in love with Sundance films and these like dark, intimate little stories. And I was like, that's the kind of stuff I want to be doing. I love Chekhov, I love Shakespeare, but that wasn't kind of the training that I wanted in New York. So that was, and when I Googled probably at that age, conservatory program like on camera, it was one of the few schools where every class you did in everything you were doing was all catered to on camera performance. And yeah, I didn't know about Stone Street or any of those other ones at that point. This was the school that popped up. And I was like, okay, we're doing this.
That's already very clever and very specific of you to be looking for that specific subset of actor training. And I did see that you had performed in Shakespeare at a very young age. So you were treading the boards, going through these types of plays, getting a little bit of training, be it formal training or just experience with that material, and then saying, no, I already want to start making my career that much more specific.
Like I loved it. I feel like there are other people that were maybe more natural physical performers than I was. Like I've always like the reviews I got even at a young age for doing local theater was that I sort of had this like expressive face and this contained like intensity, but there are people that you just see on stage that they're like full body is just so involved and they're like amazing physical comedians and that wasn't what I was interested in. So at that point, it was partly being like, you know what, I know sort of what I am good at and what I want to be even better at. And that's where just like a film career was always the thing that I wanted. Like from the youngest age, like I imagined myself, like anyone else, like, winning that Oscar for a film performance. But I got like really particular in the kind of roles. Like I was like, I want to do a biopic about like an actress from the 1950s who ends up in a mental institution. Like I was already like picturing the film like a storyteller, like a director at a really young age. It's like really funny how particular my goals and vision were. Sure, people thought I was very strange.
Well, the way actors and a lot of business people seem to be going through their careers is they increase the specificity of their workload, of their focus, because we only have a certain amount of resources, and they seem to be kind of taken away from us as we get older because we have those relationships that start to demand more of our time and resources.
I know, and I think that's interesting. And I know we're probably not at that part in the interview yet, but that's sort of been a conscious effort for me that if you want to make this career, I absolutely believe in balance, but it was something where I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, this is my time in my life to move to LA and go all in before you have sort of the constraints of family and kids and all of that, because I have so much admiration for people that are able to sort of do it all. But I think that's incredibly hard. And you do end up having to make choices of where your time goes?
Right. Well, and just when you're moving to the States and day one, you've never been to this country, you're in Midtown Manhattan, you're undertaking a 2-year conservatory program. I mean, just balancing the politics of that, the personal politics, the literal politics with a visa, and then your career and how you're understanding that as an artist and how they're instructing you to be applying that for the business of how that's operating in New York City. I mean, that's incredibly daunting to a lot of people. And I was wondering how you were balancing that from day one to the end of that conservatory experience.
Well, I mean, there was something about going and like seeing theater. I was seeing so much theater. I was trying to see every play. I would like go and line up for cheap student tickets, and I would go and see things, and then I would be going and seeing indie films at like the Angelica Film Center and all of this stuff. And then I would be in class where I was doing these like physical theater things, and then your teachers would send you to like the Met or like the Museum of Modern Art to study a painting and then like interpret it in real life, or watch people on the subway and like copy mannerisms and like all of this cool stuff. And it was like I felt like I was just like doing everything I could to sort of live it. And because I was on a student visa and wasn't allowed to have a survival job outside of acting, like that's one of the things they make you do, I was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to wait tables to pay for all of this. And I found out about this survival job called Jekyll and Hyde, where you got to do improv at a restaurant, but you didn't have to wait tables. You would just like do improv and like get to play weird, crazy characters. And while I was in school, I applied for that and was able to get my equity card doing like making a little money, getting to act. And I remembered that that was really exciting. And I was like, oh God, I'm now like a professional. And like I was so far from being a professional, even though I might have been in the union at that point. But, I would go and like pick up backstage every week and be submitting for these tiny little, crappy little student films and just like anything that I could be doing to feel like I was going on auditions and like structuring my life sort of around this art form. And I also remember finding out that classes, there was like one day a week where you'd only have like half a day of classes. And I remembered going to like sort of like the dean of the acting school and complaining because I had imagined this sort of like Fame type experience, like about, that movie Fame about like the high school performing arts. Like I imagined that like it would be this exhausting training program where I would just be like working 24/7 on my art. And they were like, it's not really like that. Like this is still like a college program. Like, we expect people to have jobs and be doing other things outside of it. So I think my peers probably thought I was like really overzealous and really passionate and kind of annoying because I was also a year younger than everyone else, like just age wise. So other people were sort of going out and partying and getting to that point of like wanting a traditional college experience. And I was thinking, no, I only have 2 years in this country. And then at that point, I would have to go back to Canada unless I was able to get sponsored and be able to stay here long term. So I think I was on just a different mindset than a lot of my peers. It took me a long time to like chill out and be like, okay, I can have like a happy, cool life and also be an actor. I was like pretty extreme at that age.
Right, but I mean, that in a lot of senses that does make sense. You're throwing yourself into this new world. It's surrounding yourself with these new peers, and so you're trying to figure it out through the practice of those different types of experiences. And how else will you have those experiences unless you chase them up? And after the 2 years, you might not. It could be quite difficult for you to do that. From my perspective, when I came out of drama school, a lot of people I knew that I was studying with, they left for Hollywood immediately. And what I wanted to do was, since I hadn't had a lot of experience with the local business landscape of acting in New York City, I did want to start figuring out what the options were for me, start seeing if what I'd been trained to do was actually available to me in the workplace. And so that's when I really started gripping in. But I mean,
And that's
if you
smart.
can grip
Because
in,
that's not something you're
yeah,
really, I
try to
mean, we
do
were
that.
taught some technical things obviously in acting school, but I remembered like them bringing agents into one of our classes to do monologues for, and all of it just seeming so daunting. Like we did like a school showcase, and I remembered that there was a casting director from Warner Brothers who left her card for me and wanted me to like send my materials, and I didn't even know what that meant. Like I had brand new headshots, but I think I like sent something via snail mail, didn't even know to like address it to her name. Like she probably never received my samples, you know what I mean? But I was just so like, it was also huge and overwhelming, and there was no like technical path of like what comes next post acting school graduation. You're just sort of like trying to figure it out on your own.
Did they have any types of business classes at the New York Conservatory?
Yes, like they did end up having business classes, and I learned a bit. Like I remembered like learning that there was an agency called William Morris and an agency called Gersh and about boutiques and all of this stuff. But I think it was like pre being able to like email agents. You know what I mean? It was still like in the world of snail mail. And I think that I knew things, but until you actually get out of a classroom and start applying those things directly yourself, it can be really overwhelming. Like once I got out there, I was like, okay, I knew that I had been in a play. It had gotten a cool little mention in the New York Times and they had said my name, but I didn't yet like have a website where I was like sending around that link. So instead I was like taking that snippet and like writing it into cover letters and like mailing them to agents and all of this stuff. Like it was, I don't know. And then from there, I got a first agent from a mailing, or an agent that was freelancing with me. And then I felt like I had made it. And once again, it was like, you know, all of these starts and stops, which happens for everyone. But it was like these like high stakes thing of like, oh my God, this is all happening. And then like nothing really happening, and realizing that I still needed to be super proactive.
Thanks for listening to the Hollywood Actor Podcast. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to rate and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening.